The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, along with the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation's Division of Safety and Hygiene and Ohio Temporary Service Companies, presents this training session to you. The goal is to address and help eliminate the high number of workplace injuries and illnesses suffered by temporary and contract employees. This program provides a basic understanding of laws, rules, and regulations designed to prevent injuries and illnesses on the job. Let's look at common workplace hazards that can cause injuries and illnesses. This presentation is not meant to replace site-specific safety and health training that your host employer is required to provide. OSHA and state laws spell out workplace safety and health rights and responsibilities. First, your employer must provide a workplace free of safety and health hazards. Next, you must understand and follow workplace safety and health laws. If you believe that your workplace presents safety or health hazards, you have the right to file a complaint with the nearest OSHA office. Your employer may not discharge you or discriminate against you for exercising this right. Contact the nearest OSHA office if you have any questions. Report injuries or near misses immediately to your host company and temporary staffing supervisors. They must formally investigate, evaluate, and make the information available. The goal is to gain knowledge of the incident to prevent further exposure to hazards and injuries. Your assistance in an investigation is extremely important and is necessary to keep the job site as safe as possible. Failing to report an incident may jeopardize your employment. Your temporary staffing company will tell you what type of work you will perform before you report to the host employer. If the host employer assigns you to a different task, please contact your temporary staffing company immediately. Employees are frequently injured when they perform work or use equipment with which they are not familiar. Your employer will not be able to remove all hazards from a job. Personal protective equipment, or PPE, may be the best means to guard against some hazards. Host employers must supply appropriate PPE. Contact your temporary staffing company immediately if the host does not supply appropriate equipment. Wear head protection anytime you work below others who are using items that could fall, or when working around objects that are close to your head. Also use protection when you work on energized electrical equipment or when working with chemicals. Many types of eye protection are available for a wide range of hazards. Wear eye protection whenever you work near molding, cutting, grinding, sanding, and other operations that produce objects that may fly into your eyes. Wear proper eye protection to prevent chemicals from splashing into your eyes. Note that this worker combines more than one means of eye protection to ensure safety. Wear special protection around welding operations to prevent eye injury from welding arcs. Never look directly at a welding arc without protection. Use this protection even if you are not the welder. Use adequate hearing protection anytime you work for long periods in areas where you must raise your voice to be heard. As with eye protection, many situations call for a combination of devices to ensure adequate hearing protection. You need respiratory protection around materials that enter the air at the workstation and beyond. Dusts from solids and mists from liquids are two of these hazards. Wear safety footwear whenever you handle materials that could fall onto your feet or whenever working around material handling equipment. Use liquid-proof shoes or boots around chemicals and make sure that your work shoes have adequate traction. Wear gloves when you work around rough, sharp, or hot objects that may abrade, cut, or burn you. Also wear appropriate protective gloves when working with chemicals. This was a very general description of basic PPE. Make sure that you have exactly what you need and use it at all times. Here are a few concerns about the workplace itself. Your host employer must have a written emergency action plan at the job site. The employer also must tell you what you are expected to do in different types of emergencies. Good housekeeping prevents many slip, trip, and fall hazards. Clean up spilled materials such as oil or water immediately, and keep work areas and aisles clear of materials and equipment, especially waste. Pay particular attention to hoses and extension cords. The employer must protect workers from falls anytime work takes place 4 feet or more above the main surface. Scaffolds, man lifts, or other work platforms must have standard guardrails. If guardrails are not feasible, the employer must provide a safety net system, or each worker must have a personal fall protection system, which must include a safety harness and secure lanyard. Floor openings must be guarded or securely covered. If you need to climb a ladder to access a roof or higher work area, the ladder must extend at least 3 feet above the landing and must be secured to the landing. Always face the ladder while climbing up or down, and never carry anything while climbing. Confined spaces are not designed for continuous occupancy and present many hazards. Never enter a labeled, identified confined space without permission and without safety precautions. You or others may use chemicals in the workplace. You will need to understand OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard and the host company's written policy. You must understand labeling, material safety data sheets or MSDSs, and training requirements for any chemicals present. Make sure you understand the basics of electrical safety, especially lockout-tagout procedures. Be aware of exposed wiring and other parts, frayed cords, improper grounding of portable tools and equipment, misuse of flexible cords, and poor access to electrical disconnects. Report these situations to your supervisors. Never use any machinery or equipment without permission, and make sure your supervisor demonstrates safe operation before you use it. Never attempt to service a machine while it is operating. Machine guards are in place for your protection. A good rule is that if you can reach over, under, around, or through a guard into a machine's point of operation, it is not properly guarded. Never remove guards for any reason. Do not wear long hair, clothing, or jewelry that could catch on any part of a machine. Do not use powered industrial vehicles unless you have been trained. Also be aware of their movements throughout the workplace and always give right-of-way to a moving vehicle. Conveyors, lift tables, roof-suspended cranes, and other equipment must be safe and guarded, but operations often expose moving parts, pinch and catch points, and suspended loads. Remain alert and clear of these hazards at all times. Do not use this equipment without training and permission. Ergonomics strives for a balance between worker capabilities and job demands by fitting a task to the person rather than forcing the person to adapt to the task. For example, material delivered between knuckle and shoulder height is less stressful to handle than material placed on the floor or on shelves above your head. Even something as simple as breaking a large load into several smaller loads makes the task safer. Material handling devices, mentioned earlier, lessen the need to move items by hand and keep workers safer. These are just a few hazards you may find at your workplace. Your host employer must provide site-specific training, including informing you of hazards and means of protection from them. You must follow those instructions. Be sure your host supervisor answers your questions regarding safe work procedures and that you have received on-site safety instruction before you start to work. Please use this program as a basic introduction and guideline to potential hazards in this type of work. The Temporary Worker Alliance does not intend this program to replace more detailed training called for by federal or state regulations or company policies. The Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and volunteer temporary staffing companies make up the Temporary Worker Alliance. The Alliance has created this program to address accident and injury hazards for temporary workers. With knowledge and awareness, supervisors and workers can minimize the effects of hazards in the industrial manufacturing environment. Most manufacturing operations require, and employers must provide, various types of personal protective devices. Wear head protection anytime others work above you or when materials could fall. You also need protection whenever items hang at head level. You need hearing protection anytime you must raise your voice in a conversation. Your employer must provide this protection and must train you in its use. Workers must become aware of eye hazards and must have access to and use any and all necessary eye protection. Never look into a welding arc. The machine operator always must have eye protection, and the employer must provide screens to shield others from the intense radiation. Your assignment may call for safety shoes or boots. Other types of foot protection may be necessary. Situations may require many other types of personal protective equipment. Make sure that the employer provides this equipment and trains you on its operation. It is your responsibility to use it. Supervisors must orient workers to the physical environment of the plant. Workers must know emergency procedures and the locations of emergency exits. Work areas and aisleways must be clearly marked and kept clear of materials and waste. Clean up spills immediately. Make sure you understand the basics of electrical safety, especially lockout-tagout procedures. Never attempt to use a locked and tagged electrical circuit. Be aware of exposed wiring and other electrical parts, frayed cords, improper grounding of portable tools and equipment, misuse of flexible cords, and poor access to electrical disconnects. Report these situations to your supervisors. Mechanical power presses generate tons of force in order to shape, cut, or assemble metal parts. Never operate these machines unless you have been thoroughly trained. If you work near a press, become familiar with its operation and stand clear of moving parts. Machine guards are in place for your protection. A good rule is that if you can reach over, under, around, or through a guard into a dangerous area during a machine's operating cycle, it is not properly guarded. Never remove a guard for any reason. Never attempt to service a machine while it is running, and do not use a locked and tagged machine. Manufacturing plants use powered industrial vehicles to move materials and equipment. Employers must train workers to use these devices. Never operate a powered industrial vehicle without training and permission. Be aware of vehicle movements throughout the workplace and make sure operators can see you. Use marked walkways whenever they are provided and be prepared to share other space with these vehicles. Never ride on a powered industrial vehicle unless it is designed for passengers, and do not allow others to ride on equipment that you operate. The employer may provide a variety of manual material handling aids. Learn how to use them safely and use them instead of your back to lift and carry materials. Try to keep loads between knuckle and shoulder height. Heavier items should be stored on lower shelves and lighter items on higher shelves. Use proper equipment and get assistance when retrieving items. Whenever possible, break heavy loads down into smaller loads. Please use this program as a basic introduction and guideline to potential hazards in this type of work. The Temporary Worker Alliance does not intend this program to replace more detailed training called for by federal or state regulations or by company policies. The Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and volunteer temporary staffing companies make up the Temporary Worker Alliance. The Alliance has created this program to address accident and injury hazards for temporary workers. Warehousing operations present many safety and health hazards, but need not be dangerous to workers. You need head protection around items that could fall onto you or when objects are near head level. Some operations call for eye, face, and hearing protection. Wear appropriate gloves when handling materials to prevent cuts, splinters, chemical contact, and other potential injuries. Special clothing may be necessary around chemicals. You need safety shoes around items that could fall onto your feet or around materials handling equipment. Chemical handling calls for protective footwear. The physical condition of the warehouse affects safety. Your host employer must mark aisleways, establish traffic patterns, and provide necessary equipment. You must help keep aisleways clear, especially of debris. Clean up spills immediately. Always walk in pedestrian-only walkways if they are available. Often, equipment and pedestrians must share spaces, so equipment operators and pedestrians must be aware of each other. Warehouses use manual materials handling tools extensively. Never use these aids unless you have been thoroughly trained in their use. For manual handling, the ideal storage area is between knuckle and shoulder height. Normal operations should call for frequently accessed items to be stored in this area. Heavier loads should be stored on lower shelves and lighter items on higher shelves. Use proper equipment and get help when retrieving heavy items or items out of your reach. Use great care when unloading pallets. First, use head, eye, and hand protection when cutting straps or bands from loads. Make sure the bands do not fly out and hit you or other workers. Immediately discard the cut straps or bands since they represent a cutting hazard. Hold and use box cutting knives in the proper manner and never leave a cutting device in the open with its blade exposed. Always cut away from your body and never toward a nearby worker. Store the knife properly when you aren't using it. Make sure you learn correct procedures for working around loading docks. Secure truck trailers and rail cars to prevent them from separating from the docks, and use a dock board to bridge the gap between the trailer or rail car and the dock. Clean up any debris, water, snow, ice, oil, or other substances immediately. Never jump from a loading dock. Use the stairs. Always be aware of trucks in the dock area and make sure the drivers can see you. Please use this program as a basic introduction and guideline to potential hazards in this type of work. The Temporary Worker Alliance does not intend this program to replace more detailed training called for by federal or state regulations or company policies.